Are some California Democrats derailing housing construction? Pod Save America host John Lovett featured State Senator Scott Wiener and City Council member Imelda Padilla to discuss what Lovett says is a housing crisis in the state.
Wiener is the author of SB 79, a bill aimed at allowing and streamlining more housing around transit stops. Lovett pressed Padilla over the issue. Let's watch what happened.
This is an emergency. The problem isn't that there are going to be buildings too high near transit stops. The problem is there is nowhere for people who want to come to California to live. It is pushing our entertainment business out. It is pushing young people out. This is an emergency. We should all be freaking out about how urgent it is to do anything humanly possible to build housing. And you're worried about whether or not there's a place for a few senior citizens to sit outside a building that developers are trying to build. And I'm saying, great, that's important. But are you focused on what will ultimately make California affordable for the people in your district?
Some of Padilla's answers to Lovett's question left him not quite pleased. Let's take a look.
The neighbors didn't want it at all. They just didn't want the density. But we still, as a team, got together with the developer, the high school across the street, other stakeholders, and instead of building something that was potentially 6 stories, we got it down to 3 stories. And we also got the developer to also work with us to make sure that it helps the families of the area. We also said, instead of a ton of office space, we do want you to also incorporate a few more parking lots and EV chargers. So yeah, there's some developers that have built housing where it looks like a big, ugly cement box in the middle of the neighborhood. But what I want is something that people will be proud of.
Padilla, of course, opposes SB 79. She bragged there about bringing a 6-story building down to 3, and as you heard, requiring more parking and electric vehicle chargers.
Lovett was sounding off on X about the project after that podcast, writing, California has a massive housing crisis. SB 79 is a bill that will permit and streamline construction of more housing around transit stops, in some cases overriding local rules and objections.
Last month, Los Angeles' City Council voted to oppose SB 179.
Yeah, this went very viral on social media a few days ago, and I think deservedly so. I'm not in sympathy with John Lovett on everything, but on this one, I certainly am.
Sure.
And I guess so was that other state senator who is often courts controversy from is attacked by the right, but here was a sponsor of a bill I certainly would support, and that other individual just gleefully celebrate how, well, at least I allowed you to have a 3-story building. Lady, the problem is we need tall buildings for the number of people who are going to come in, and we can't have these these towny concerns about, oh no, our precious rustic and the feel of our neighborhood will be compromised. So I first encountered this kind of behavior actually when in college. The University of Michigan is headquartered in Ann Arbor, which is a very, very progressive, very liberal city. Probably 99% Democratic, extremely progressive. But the city council was always having fights with ardently progressive people saying that with this completely conservative, not politically conservative, but just old-fashioned mindset, that any change to the city, to the way it looked, couldn't happen, even if it was absolutely necessary. They'd be like, oh, there's going to be more wind because the buildings are too high. I remember these arguments because I was on the editorial board of the student newspaper, the Michigan Daily, and we'd have to interview the city council members when they were running for re-election. And I was always pushing us to endorse. I didn't care about the rest of their politics because I didn't agree with these people on anything. But whichever one was the most dismissive of breeze claims, that there's too much wind because of tall buildings, is who I wanted to endorse.
Fair enough. Look, this is a rare moment where we're both on John Lovett's side, I think. I think the reason it went viral was his reaction as much as what she actually said. Now, even among the Pod Save America bros, I sometimes find him a bit irritating. No offense to him if he's a big rising viewer. Because I think he can be, well, first of all, I think he thinks he's a lot funnier than I think he is, which doesn't really help. And also, he's just a bit performative for my liking. Anyway, the point is, his reaction there, I think, was genuine to the woman claiming as a great success that she had been able to reduce the size of this building, which doesn't really seem to serve anybody's purposes.
But the old people who are going to sit in their chairs, they don't want to be in a shadow, Niall.
I mean, Look,
If there's too many, if there's a veto point for, can't be this many veto points.
Right.
Is the problem on new construction. There's way too many veto points, and there's way too many people for, obviously they have an incentive. Yeah, right. If you own a building or a house, do you want the house next to you to go under construction? No, but at some level, that's kind of just life.
Well,
and if you prevent that or have way too many ways to prevent that, you're going to get no construction whatsoever.
Right, and I think in the first clip that we played before she was giving the answer, Lovett, to be fair, made a reasonable case as to why there were negative repercussions to what we'll call the community of California overall, by virtue of a housing shortage and how that was creating all sorts of problems that trickled down from that. So look, it is obviously, I think where I am stopped a little is, it's obviously valid to entertain the environmental effects of housing change, and we don't want, an entire mix of housing styles even destroying the aesthetics of a particular neighborhood. I think.
Yeah, although I think mixes look good.
I think sometimes they can look like when you have, for example, a very historic block, and then there's just like a modern or apartment tower block erected in the middle of it. I'm like, that's kind of ugly.
I have no problem with that.
I would be more protective. Myself and our friend Amber Duke were just discussing on Friday President Trump's executive order to maintain classical style in architecture, which myself and Amber were big fans of. But you sound like you think that's government overreach.
Well, I actually think the brutalist buildings that nobody likes the way they look, myself included, for office buildings in particular, they actually look less bad if there's not too many of them. If there's one and then there's I actually think mix looks good. Maybe that's just my own stylistic preferences, right? Often things that are cited as very ugly, very millennial, I think are perfectly good looking because I am of that age. But sometimes they're using the historical preservation argument in just utterly manipulative and incorrect ways. My colleague at Reason, Christian Brischke, has written about a lot of these cases. They would make your eyes roll back out of your head. The times where there was this guy who had a restaurant, it was called Tom's Diner or something. There's nothing historic about it. He contends that there's nothing historic about it. He wanted to sell it. This is his retirement. Doesn't want to own a restaurant anymore. Wants to retire, wants to sell it, turn it into an apartment complex, to sell it to some developers. And of course, the neighbors around that can stop that by filing a petition to have it deemed a place of historic preservation importance, so that he can't sell his property, retire, and live out comfortably happy, can't sell to an apartment building. George Washington never stopped at this diner. It wasn't on the Underground Railroad. It's not, they didn't remember the Alamo there.
What about the sentimental value of the neighbors, eating their corned beef hash there? They might have met their spouses there, Robby. There might be all kinds of romantic or nostalgic values.
For grocery stores, for everything is on some level historic. Yeah. It's just, again, it speaks to, it's not that there can't be some consideration for, if there's an actually historic landmark for some reason, right? We don't want to bulldoze Monticello or Mount Vernon or something, and we're going to be careful about what's built around it, sure. But it's just the dial on that has been cranked up way too high in some jurisdictions, like my college town, Ann Arbor, and California, because then we'll never change anything.
Sure. Well, I'm not, as you can tell, I'm not out of sympathy with that idea. I also am slightly in sympathy, to get back to the Pod Save America thing, that I guess she was a city council member, Ms. Padilla. I do feel a little sorry that this was presumably her big moment, being on this massive podcast in the democratic world, and the one clip that goes massively viral is not a good one for her.
No, it isn't. But they voted that down. It's a mild bill from what I understand, to make it to streamline a little bit. And apparently the city council is in sympathy with her position.
The representatives of the people. So there we go. Next up, on a more serious note, a scholarly association has passed a resolution declaring that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. We'll be right back with that.